Guys, coming for the Girlfriend Experience, Season 1, Episode 3, Retention. I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I loved the first two episodes, and this episode, without a doubt, was the best of the three. I think the show is just getting better and better as it goes on. And this episode, really, Retention was the perfect plot, because it's all about someone trying to retain something. Everyone in the show was, every plot had to do with that. We did get a subplot introduced in this, because of the whole thing going on with Kirkland. We found out more was going on with that. We got some incredible scenes in this episode, and you know how I said the show has been pretty low-key? That stops after this episode, because already things are crazy. We're only in episode 3, and already things are crazy. You can already tell how much this is going to complicate things, and the thing is, they do need to move kind of quickly, because I don't know if I said this before, this is going to end up being an anthology series. We're only going to follow Christine's storyline, Christine's character this season. We're not going to see her after next season. We might see her, but she's not going to be the main focus. There'll be a new woman that comes in. So I think they're doing a very good job with that. I absolutely loved everything about this episode. I actually have a lot to say about this episode. And again, just it moves so fast, though. But it was only half an hour, but it moves so fast and so much happened. And I still can't get over the fact that they're able to tell this story in only half an hour. So right away we see Christine meets with Jacqueline, who tells her she doesn't have much time and has back-to-back meetings all day. And she says it went very well with Michael, and hope the whole widower thing wasn't too intense. And Christine says it's fine, she can't do this, and says she's worried about Avery. And I fucked up in the last review, because I thought that Avery, by the way, guys, of course, if you haven't seen this episode, don't watch the rest of the review. I know only the first 2 episodes have aired on Starz, but you can watch all 13 episodes right now on the Starz app or on demand and things like that. So, definitely I'd say check it out. It's a great show, especially if you love the first 2 episodes. It's a great binge show. Like, I feel like this is a show that's meant to be binged. I don't honestly know why Starz is doing it weekly. I feel like it's a show that should be binged, and that's kind of how it should be. Obviously, you can watch it weekly if you want to, but I feel like it's better if you just binge it. It really is one of those kind of shows. So basically, she says she's so worried about Avery, and basically, like I said, I fucked up in the last episode. I thought that Jacqueline wasn't taking Christine's calls, when really she's not taking Avery's calls. And basically, Christine says that, asks why she won't talk to her. Jacqueline says because she's erratic and unreliable, and Christine tells her that, look, she needs help, and she's staying with her. She's not in school, she's broke, and that she really isn't, doing very well. And Jacqueline doesn't really seem to care at all. Like, she says, this is my problem, and Christine says that she's taking clients away from her. Jacqueline says she loves to play the victim, tells her that she has a business to run and has to judge pretty quickly whether she can work with someone, because the huge difference between basically being able to trust and being able is something really huge. And with Avery, she can only barely kind of trust her. With Christine, she fully trusts her. And Christine asks what she's getting at, and Jacqueline says that Avery booked clients that she gave her on the side without telling her, and asks if she condones that, and says if she wants to help her, then help her. But if she's smart, she'll keep her distance and not let her seduce her. Jacqueline says that she has to go, and says to be careful with Avery, and you can already tell that Christine can really tell that Jacqueline really isn't that trustworthy. I mean, especially with someone like Avery, who hasn't really done anything wrong, except Jacqueline doesn't really support her in the way she supports Christine, because Christine, like I said, is just a lot more reliable. Even though Christine's not getting big head about this or anything, obviously she likes the control, but she does want to help Avery. Obviously, Avery introduced her this. Avery's been at this longer than her. Avery's expressed interest in doing this sort of thing, so she really does want to help her. And basically, we then see her meet with Craig. If you remember that, the first guy she ever hooked up with in the show, Craig, we see her meet up with him again. And she actually tells him all about being a GFE, which I thought was interesting, because I didn't think she would reveal that, but she actually tells him all about it. And in many shows, this would be something where, oh, we have to hide this from them. But no, Christine isn't afraid to tell her secret. She's not afraid to say, hey, I'm a GFE, and this actually is who I am. And that's why, she took so long to call him back. He said it's interesting. She asks if he thinks she's fucked up, and he says she seems very clear, and she asks him how business school is, and then they end up having sex, obviously, because that's just how she is. And I like this scene between Craig and Christine. It was a very, short, it was a quick scene, but it really does show what Craig means to Christine. To Craig, to Christine, Craig is just another guy she's with, and is just as much as, a part of her job as someone like Michael or, any of the guys that she's been with so far. And I definitely really liked that. I thought that was really great. And I like that Craig is okay with this. Like, he understands why she's doing. She understands that she wants control, and she then goes to Kirkland, and we get a lot more with Kirkland in this episode than we have. Not that we didn't get a lot before, but this is by far the most we've had with Kirkland. But what I like about this episode is that there wasn't really one-sided here. We see a lot of Kirkland, but we also see a lot of her working as a GFE, because we need to see her work both of these jobs. And you can already tell in this episode it is starting to get complicated, which we'll get into. But she basically, we see she then goes to Kirkland. David tells Susan that Akers is out, and Barr confirmed it this morning. And we don't know who Akers is, but apparently Akers was that client. If you remember that whole board meeting they had, we find out more what's going on there in this episode. David goes into Akers' office, says he hears he's leaving, and this is the first scene I think we've had on the show that's not in Christine's perspective, which I thought was interesting, but I understand that we do need to follow David, because I do think that David's eventually going to become a big part of Christine's story. I mean, just the way they've been setting it up, I think eventually these two are going to hook up, especially since the men that Christine's been with, David is not too far from their age, so I could definitely see Christine and David hooking up at some point. So David goes into Akers' office, says he hears he's leaving. Akers says that it was a tough decision, but he knows how it is. He has family to think of, and he says maybe he'll hate him from crawling back in a few weeks begging for another chance, and tells me he's given him LSI and Polycone. And Polycon, David asks what's happening with XHP, because that's what he's most concerned about. He's most concerned about XHP, if you remember, that's what this whole thing's about. And Akers says he's taking them with him. They came to him fair game. David asks how long he knew he was leaving, and he doesn't answer this question, which is clearly something that David wants to ask him, but then just tells him that XHP is his, and if they're unhappy with the work that he did there, there's not much he can do about it now, and so he just wanted him to know in case he needed any help transitioning, and Akers says he appreciates it. He asked if him and Carla are still coming on the 14th, obviously his wife, and Akers says he wouldn't miss it for the world. It's Carla's favorite, and David says that's great. They'll have a few in his honor, and you can tell that David's really upset with Akers, but he's really trying to hold back. And just like the title of the episode, Retention, he's really trying to retain the rest of his workers, because he knows that Akers is leaving, and he doesn't want anyone else to leave. So he asks if him, and basically, we then see he meets with the board, says Akers is a snake. His boss says he won't get lazy and lost XHP. David says he completely understands. The other official says he has no idea how to absorb the loss. They account for 5% of their billing, and David says he understands, and they tell him to please stop saying that, and David says to let him fix it. They ask how, he says to trust him. He can get them back right. If you remember, the guy that they were taught, the Emery Wright, you know, the client that they had the whole problem with in the last episode, he's going to try to retain him because he's being unreasonable, and these kind of cases take time. He knew that there were going to be mistrials, and he can turn them around. He has it, because that's what happens. I mean, sometimes there just are mistrials, and Wright had to go into this knowing that, and basically, he really wants to change things, but his boss says that he really thought he was right considering for managing partner, and you can see that even though David is the big boss of Kirkland, he's far from having that much power. I mean, he clearly has a boss and this other guy to look up to, and they basically are telling him what to do, and he's not giving in to their demands. They're really starting to not trust him as much, and it's very similar what's going on with Christine. So for me, this didn't feel like it was detached from the main story at all, because the show, like I said, is really about control. Who's in control, who wants to be in control, who wants full power, and that's exactly what this was. You know, David wants that full power, but he doesn't have it because obviously he has demands that his bosses want, and David then goes to Christine, tells her to call accounting, get a record of all the hours they billed for XHP last quarter. Christine says she's got it, and he says to get for the entire year, and obviously he wants to do whatever he can to retain Wright. He wants to make sure that he can get him because Akers is leaving, and he wants to keep Wright. So Christine goes home, and Avery asks if she's seen Jacqueline lately, and Avery, without a doubt, is the character you feel the worst for, because you know the situation she's in, but things even get worse for her here, because Christine says they had coffee last week, and lies and says they did not talk about her, clearly because she doesn't want Avery to think that there's, that Jacqueline purposely wanted her to leave, but Avery asks if she's sure her name didn't come up, not even once, and Christine says it didn't, and again, she's lying to her. Like, I thought this was interesting that Christine was literally just saying, no, your name did not come up, but when the entire conversation was structured around Avery. I find that to be very interesting. So Avery says she's still not returning her calls, and she knows she got to Garrett, and there's no other way he was obsessed with her. She pours some wine, and I love this little scene again, the way she's just like, you want some, and Christine says no. Just interesting the way that was done there. She tells Christine she officially dropped out of law school, and Christine is shocked that she withdrew, because she doesn't have, Garrett. Avery's not getting to her. She's not going to law school. What does she want? And Avery says that she hates it and she wants to do something else, and asks how her coveted internship is going. Christine asks what she's going to do, and Avery says she'll blackmail her and fuck up her life, and she's glad she's not in law school because she might be able to go on vacation, which she loves. And again, very small dialogue, but important stuff, definitely. You can tell that this really means something to Avery. Like, she really does want to do this. She wants to get revenge on Jacqueline, and obviously there's really nothing that Christine can do. Christine is realizing basically the hole that she's digging herself in. I mean, as good as this sounds, she can really tell that Jacqueline, you can't really trust her. I mean, Jacqueline clearly is someone that has demands, and when you don't give in to her demands, she turns on you. And that's exactly what's going on with Avery. And that's something that Christine, I think, is kind of worried is going to happen with her. So we see Chelsea then meets with her new client, Kevin, who tells her that she's stunning and asks if she got the transfer, and she says she assumes so. He says he's here till Friday and doesn't come to town often, only about once every month or so, although that could change because of her. And what I loved about the clients in this episode is that right now, Christine just sees them as kind of just her job. She sees her as her occupation. You can tell the men's feelings for her are definitely deepening, and especially with Kevin. Right away, you can tell that Kevin and Chelsea click right away. And even though, this is Christine's job as Chelsea, she has to just pretend to be interested, which something I've picked up on very quickly, and something I never actually talked about. If you notice when guys make jokes on the show, Christine doesn't get it. Like, she doesn't think they're jokes, and she doesn't enjoy their humor. She only laughs when it's a female, but when it's a male, she doesn't appreciate the male energy when it comes to humor. But when she's Chelsea, she basically has to hide it, and she actually does laugh at Kevin's jokes, when in reality, I don't really think she does find them funny. So she says she assumes so, and he says he's here till Friday, doesn't come to town often, only about once every month or so, although that could change because of her. She asks why, he says because of her. She says to slow down for his sake. Right away, you can tell he's growing an attachment to her, and he says he can tell already and tells her he's a little nervous. It's been a while for him, and he's married, and she's just spectacular. And again, you can tell this is a lot for her to take in, just knowing this guy's married, but he already is growing this attraction to her, when really this is just a job to her. I mean, it really is a scary thing to think about. This guy who you're just meeting already has this, who already wants commitment, and she says she's glad, he thinks so, says they have time, there's no need to rush, but they end up having sex anyway, basically, even though she says there's no time to rush, they end up having sex, which probably the most graphic we've seen so far. I mean, it lasted for a good 2 minutes, definitely, but again, the way they show sex is never, just gratuitous. It always feels like it's about control. Christine always seems like she's in control, and that she's dominating these men, and that's kind of what we saw here. I mean, she even says, beg for me, say how it feels, things like that. And Chelsea and Kevin then lie in bed post-coital. She gets a call from Avery, who tells her Jacqueline cleaned all of her accounts and took all of her money. So now Jacqueline not only basically, disowned her, but now she's going into her accounts. And this is getting really personal. And Christine asks she had access to her bank accounts, and Avery says it was stupid of her and she's sorry. And she goes to their apartment, looks for Avery, who's passed out sleeping. She looks through her drawer, opens up her purse, and there's no money whatsoever. So obviously, this is when Christine has just had it. She knows that she needs to get angry at Jacqueline. Jacqueline she's trusted her. She can't trust her. She knows she can't. And she then gets in Jacqueline's face, and we finally get that big scene that it feels like we've always been building up to. Like I said, for the past 3 episodes, it feels like we've been building up to something big, but we haven't had it yet, and this finally felt like we get that big scene, because she literally gets right into Jacqueline's face, who at first, wants to talk to her, but she's not in the mood for talking. She is going to lecture her, and she says she used Avery, and Jacqueline says she used them both, and Christine says she's a fucking leech, and dumps her a plate of food right on her lap and leaves, and that was just awesome. I love the way that was done. I love that Christine is taking action, and she's doing whatever she can to help out Avery. Even if she's not helping her, she just doesn't want anything to do with Jacqueline right now. And this convinces her that she can't continue working with Jacqueline. Because right now, even though Jacqueline is giving her this nice treatment, eventually, like Avery, she's going to turn against her. Because it's clear when the client doesn't do what Jacqueline wants, that she gets angry. And she wants to clearly retain Christine, but Christine doesn't want that. She wants to go against her at all costs, and I love seeing that. Already, she wants to go against Jacqueline, and that makes sense with her character. Like I said, she wants to be in power. And also, she wants to help Avery. So, Erin then goes to David, asks if he has a minute. He tells her to close the door. We know that there's been something been going on between Erin and David. We've seen it throughout the show, and we definitely start to get more of a sense of what's going on here. She asks what they're going to do. He says he's going to make a deal and reduce their rate. She says she's not convinced that'll be enough. He says everyone's got their price tag, and says she looks tired. She says he has a way of avoiding the point. He says he doesn't want to bring her into this, and he doesn't want her to get involved. And I don't know if Erin and David are going through something romantically, but that's what it kind of seems like to me. Like, she's kind of in his life more than just a client. Like, she really does, she's more than just one of his workers. She really does want to help him, but he doesn't want her to get involved, which is very interesting. So Christine then goes into Kirkland, sits down at her desk, and things get even worse here, because basically like I said, I mean, these 3 jobs, they keep talking about it, but it didn't seem like it was really gonna be a big deal, and here we're starting to see that it is starting to cause problems because she's late to Kirkland, and Susan tells her she's late, says she had a doctor's appointment, says she's sorry. Susan says to erase that word from her vocab and just be on time in the future, and again, she has to make up these little lies, but I do feel these little lies are eventually going to implement into big lies, and that's what's going to end up happening. Right now it's kind of low key, but it's going to just, get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it can't get any better. You can already tell this is already complicating things. And I think that she wants these, 3 jobs, but she can't really juggle all of them. You can already tell. So Chelsea's with Michael, tells him that she's thinking of leaving Jacqueline and breaking out on her own, and she's already thinking of leaving her. She wants to be on her own, and Michael's okay with it. He says she called him and he was wondering about it, and she says she doesn't want him to put him in the middle of this. He says she loves spending time with him, and you have to wonder, is she really saying this, or is this just part of her job? Because you don't really know. Does she genuinely care about Michael? I mean, there's a part of me that feels like she does care about these guys, and then there's a part of me that feels she just likes to be in control. I don't really know. I feel like with this, it's kind of questionable. Just the way she talks to these guys, it seems like she's sincere, but again, that's part of her job. Part of her job is to be sincere. So does she really care? We don't really know. She says she'd hate anything to jeopardize that. She just hopes he'll still consider seeing her, and if he's not comfortable with that, she can wait. And he asks her how long they've been seeing each other. She says nearly 2 months. So basically, we're supposed to believe that that this has taken place 2 months, and he says he's there with her. She's the one he wants to be with. He says to just let him know how she wants to handle it, and he's okay with it. He wants her to go through with it. He kisses her, and again, it seems like Michael and Chelsea, these are the only two that aren't really having sex. We haven't seen Michael and Chelsea have a sex scene. I don't think they're gonna have a sex scene, because like we know, Michael doesn't just want sex. He wants actual emotional commitment, which again is something that I think Ashley kind of doesn't really want to give him, but at the same time, she kind of has to. Just the way this is going, she doesn't really have a choice but to give him that emotional commitment. Even if she doesn't want to, she kind of has to, even though I think there's a part of her that really doesn't want to give him that commitment, because obviously this is just part of her job, and it's really hard for her to give that commitment. I mean, just imagine this job. You have all these different guys. How can you do all that? And I don't think they all know about each other, obviously. So Christine is the main copies at Kirkland, and this is when things just get crazy. I mean, things are already crazy, but this is when it's even more crazy. She looks at an envelope on her desk, opens it, and there are the pictures that she took to be a GFE. And I was freaking out at the scene. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if Dave was going to find. I mean, obviously everything is going. There are so many things going through her right now. Is anyone going to find this? How is this going? This could ruin her reputation at the office. I mean, who could have gotten these photos? And she knows exactly who did it. She knows that it's Jacqueline. She just needs confirmation. She asks Susan if she knows who put this on her desk. Susan asks what it is. Christine says that it's just a copy of an XHP affidavit, because obviously she has to play cool about this, and she'll take care of it. She goes to the receptionist, asks her the same question. She asks Susan and tells her to check the log. And she goes out and basically she asks the receptionist and tells her to check the log. She goes outside of Kirkland, flips through the pictures, then goes back to her desk and tells Susan that's already been scanned. Now, why do I think she didn't really look at the log? Because she already knows what's happening here, but she's looking through these pictures, and I think she's actually kind of regretting what she did. I mean, when you look up, the word Chelsea, that's gonna be online forever, and it's not gonna go away. And I think she's kind of not really upset about it, but I think she's kind of regretful that she worked with Jacqueline. She knows that she was basically manipulating her, and knowing that she definitely knows she wants to get away from her, and already knowing that Jacqueline wants to retain her. This is kind of Jacqueline's way of basically saying, look, you're going to stay. And even though she didn't actually say this, to me, this is what Jacqueline is saying is, look, you're either going to stay or I'm just going to post these pictures and everyone's going to see them. I mean, that's obviously crazy and a threat, but, Jacqueline already seems like she would go that far, just the way this is going. So David's at a dinner with Erin and asks how her dad is, which we haven't heard about before, her dad, but we do hear about it here, which is interesting. She says it is what it is. He says he tried that sushi place she showed him on North Broadway, and again, you can tell these two are definitely bonding. I like that we haven't fully established a relationship, because that's not what's important. What's important is what they're trying to do with Wright. Wright then comes, remember, the show should never feel like we're close with the characters. It should feel like we're a fly on the wall, and that's very much what I feel. So Wright then comes by. David says the fact that he's there is 50% of their battle, and David says he's glad he could make it. He sits down and tells him he knows why they asked him there, and they tell him that they would very much like to continue the relationship with both himself and XHP. And Wright asks if they can talk results because they're in legal limbo, and David says he'd love to talk results. Wright says he can't justify what he calls a series of mistrials with a deal he's pretty sure he could pull off with his eyes closed, because what they're offering him at the, other place, I can't think of the name right now, but what they're offering him there is just much better. And, even though they want to retain him, he's kind of thinking of taking the deal. And David says he understands, but these cases take time. Mistrials are a hazard of their trade, and it may happen 10 or 15 more times before they get the verdict they want. And that really is true. I mean, a lot of times in mistrials, things don't go well, and this is kind of what they have to deal with. And he says he knows it feels like they've been putting him through the ringer. Wright says he is. He says he can't believe he has to explain this to him. Says the lawyers will be paid to solve this in. XHP is now projecting negative $300 million for this year, and if he's going to do a sales pitch, tell him how XHP wins, because it's clear they get paid whether they profited or not. And David asks what Akers is offering him, and Wright says he knows he can't discuss. Erin says they could commit him to 3 months to get him back on their team, which I think is a pretty good deal, but Wright says he'd have to send it upstairs, and Erin says work with them for 6 months. Akers is an excellent litigator, but moving his business to a new firm will cause a whole new series of setbacks and basically won't benefit him. They're trying to tell him, look, if you don't stay with us, this will create a lot more problems for you, and we don't want that to happen. We want you to be able to get through this. We want you to be able to, we want things to go well for you, and we don't want you to have to deal with this, which is clear that you can tell that Wright, I don't really think necessarily cares. Wright kind of just wants what he wants, and that's how it's going to be. But I like that they are trying to retain him as best as they can. They're kind of giving him this offer that he can't really refuse, but we'll have to see where that goes. So Chelsea then meets with Kevin, and definitely, like I said, things are getting very complicated here. He tells about a couple that own a chain of liquor stores, and they keep coming back to him to broker. And now the hotel they want to buy would really put him on the next level, and it would mean for them, And she asks what it would mean. He says he's so happy to see her, and says there are things he wants to tell her that he shouldn't, and tells her he's not crazy. He knows he doesn't know her well, but he feels like he does, and says her eyes are so honest, and says he knows it sounds like a line, but he can't get her out of his head, and he doesn't want to. And she says that's sweet. And again, the way she's saying that, you can tell she's a little bit freaked out. I think going through her mind, she's thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I have these guys that I barely know, and I have to act like I love them when I don't really. And he says she doesn't have to say that. She says she knows that, and he says that there are many things he wants to tell her, and she says to just tell her. And basically, you can tell that their relationship is really changing. Like, he really wants to be committed to her, while I think Chelsea, to Chelsea, this is just her occupation. This is just what it is, and it's not much else. So she goes into the car, changes, and heads into law school. She gets a call from her sister, Abby, who we have heard about her sister before, but we don't actually physically see her, but we hear from her. Basically asks her if she can call her back. Abby says she's just heading into town, and says she wanted to let her know she's coming to town tomorrow. She'll probably get in around there. You can already tell it's going to complicate things, because Abby has no idea what Christine has been up to. She doesn't know about her being a GFE. She doesn't know about Avery. She doesn't know that she moved out with Tariq. I mean, there's a lot of things that Christine and Abby, you can already tell they're going to go through, and I'm very interested in seeing how they further explore this. So she heads into class late, tells her professor that she got stuck in traffic, asks if she can make it to the test. Her professor says she can. She only has 10 minutes. Christine then takes the test, and we don't know if Christine actually passes it, but again, it just shows that these three jobs are really starting to get complicated, and even though they're small things right now, they're going to get much bigger, and I can already tell this is going to get very bad, because the fact that she was, only had 10 minutes left in class, I mean, that's crazy, but that's just kind of what this life entails. So she then gets ready to be Chelsea and goes to Ryan, who's upset with, and again, just knowing she has all these different clients, it has to be hard for her, because she has all these different clients who all feel very much the same way, but she doesn't really know what to do. If I were Chelsea, I'd be very underwhelmed. I'd be very overwhelmed, definitely. I mean, having all these guys fawn over her for the same things, want to be with her, want all this commitment, and she's kind of just like, this is my job. Basically, she goes to Ryan, who is upset with someone about not getting him the proprietary information. She asks him if he's alright. He says he got screwed and needs to shake it off. Asks her if she wants to get drunk, and she says she does. He tells her what happened, and she asks how long they've been partners, and he says too long. He says he promises not to talk about it anymore, and says that she likes hearing him talk about it. It's good for him to talk about it. He says he likes talking to her about it, and says he likes her. Asks her where she's from, and she says just outside of Philly. Her parents are teachers. Her mother teaches 5th grade English. Her dad teaches math in high school. And again, you don't know if this is true. You're thinking that this is a lie, because again, she has to kind of do that. She asks she likes to do, and she says be alone, and we get a lot of details in this scene I think is very interesting, and I really like this. Just the way she kind of responds here, because he asks what she likes to do, and she says she just likes to be alone. She doesn't like to be with anything else. He asks if she wants to get married. She says she doesn't believe in marriage, and she doesn't want kids either, and it's clear she doesn't want this emotional commitment, which is interesting. And again, we don't know if she's just saying she doesn't want to get married to coax him out of it, because clearly these men are all getting attached to her. Like, you can tell that Michael and Ryan and Kevin, they're all getting attached to her. That's the common theme between all three of these men. Even Craig, kind of, but not really Craig. Craig is just kind of some guy she's seeing on the side. He's not even in her job, really. But definitely Ryan, Kevin, and Michael, the thing that resemble these three, the thing that all three of them have in common is that they're all getting closer to her, and they all want this commitment, but she doesn't really want that. And I don't know if she's just saying that she doesn't want kids just because she doesn't want him to think she does, or if she genuinely doesn't want that. I think it's a very interesting way they did that. So basically, he asks what she does want, and she says she's studying law. He says he believes that, and he asks what kind, and she says patent, and he asks if her siblings are as smart as her, and she says she has a brother, which we know she doesn't. So you have to think that a lot of what she's saying is a lie, and that's what I'm wondering, if what she's saying before to him was a lie. He says she's so smart and he's so selfish. They go to a hotel room and tells him that she's leaving Jacqueline, and basically tells him straight out she's leaving Jacqueline. He says to just tell him where to send the money. He doesn't really care, and tells her to take her clothes off, and she does as asked, and that's where the episode ends. So crazy episode, so much to get into. I loved everything about this episode. This was definitely, like I said, the strongest one so far, and already you can tell that things are getting really complicated for Christine. Whether it's that these men want emotional commitment, which I don't really think she wants. She kind of thinks this as her job, and this is something that she's doing. Obviously, she's gotten herself into this, but I don't really think she thought of what she's really getting herself into. I mean, this is a very complicated, dangerous situation she's in now, and there's not really much she can do about it. She can't really say no, because he's already involved, and all three of these men clearly have taken a liking to her, and she can't really push them away, even though I think she kind of wants to. She can't really do that, unfortunately, which, obviously, like I said, I think she really wants to pull them away, but she can't really do that just because they're all getting attracted to her, and they all want this commitment, which I don't really think she wants. I'm also very interested in seeing what's going to happen with Jacqueline. Is she going to be able to get rid of Jacqueline? I mean, it's clear Jacqueline does want to keep her in her life, and she does want to make sure that Christine is a part of this, because she really respects Christine, or Christine is giving her money and things like that. But we don't really know if that's working out for her. Also, and then between what's going on in law school, with her being 10 minutes late, and then her being late to her job, and then her sister Abby coming, how is she going to explain to Abby what's been going on? Because Abby, of course, doesn't know about her being a GFE. And we don't know much about Abby. We don't know if what she said to Ryan was true. I'm assuming it's not. We don't even know if what she said to her parents was true. We clearly know her mother. She hasn't told her a lot, and she still hasn't had the discussion with her mother. Well, maybe she has. We just haven't seen it. But I think it's very interesting what's going on with Abby. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when Abby arrives. That's going to be very interesting. I'm wondering about what's going to happen with Avery, because Avery obviously is not with, obviously she's no longer with, now I can't think of his name. What was his name? The guy that she was, what was his name? I can't even, Garrett. She's no longer with Garrett, of course, because Jacqueline pushed him away. So does she continue being a GFE? Does she decide to stop? I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen there. We'll have to see. I would be surprised, because obviously Avery's the thing that got her into this. But if she stopped being a GFE, it would kind of make sense, because she can no longer trust Jacqueline, so why should she continue being a GFE? It would kind of make sense. What's going to happen with Wright? Will David and Erin be able to retain Wright? And also, what's going on with David and Erin? It's clear they have some sort of relationship. I don't think it's just law. I think they clearly do have something more going on. We'll have to see what's going on there. But overall, guys, great episode. Really loving the show, as you guys know. Amazing stuff so far. This third episode, like I said, I am definitely hooked. I've been hooked since episode 1. Each episode, I think it just hooks me in more and more. I'm loving it. And let me know what you guys saw this episode. Love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.